I, 37F, have been going through a weird problem in life. I recently had a baby and my FIL refuses to accept him as his grandchild because of his brown eyes. I have been married to my husband for over a decade. I have a 4-year-old son, Dean, who is the exact copy of his father and grandfather. However, my younger son, who is now 4 weeks old, doesn't look like them. He looks like me but has brown eyes like my dad. My husband, Phil, Mill, Dean, and I, all have blue eyes. Phil has told us that he would not accept my younger son to be his grandchild until we run a paternity test on him. You see, how crazy he is. My Phil has never been so fond of me. Ever since he met me 15 years ago, he has been resentful of me. We were still in grad school when my husband introduced me to his parents. Initially, he was very cheerful and fascinated by my achievements at the school, but when he got to know about my parents, he made an awful face. He was upset that I come from a lower middle class family. He thought I was not a suitable girl to date for his son. He told my husband that dating and all is fine, but he shouldn't get serious about me. He even suggested my husband seek his friend's daughter as they were classy and wealthier. My husband didn't tell me all this until much later. God knows what he sees in me that he stuck around. Unlike what my Phil thinks, we are not poor. My dad is a plumber and not so flashy businessman like my Phil. Phil raised his eyebrow when I told him my mom worked part-time jobs. Money was decent, but we were 4 kids, so we were always on a tight budget. It was because of the scholarship that I was able to make it to that college. He was shocked when my husband told him we were getting married because he couldn't believe that our relationship sustained after grad school. Though he was upset with his son's choice to marry me, he showed up at our wedding and was in his best behavior, even with my parents and family. 6 years later, when my elder son was born, Phil was over the moon. He was apprehensive about my ability to conceive a grandchild for him because we didn't plan kids for 6 years of our marriage. He thought I had a problem. Whatever it be, he was happy he got one, and most importantly he looked like him and his son, my husband. Kids do cast some good spells on their grandparents. To add the cherry on the cake, he was a boy, and my Phil is the kind of person who thinks boys bear the family name. My husband and I thought it was a good way to bond with Phil. We could have cut off Phil from our lives, but it was because of Mill we were putting up with him. She is a pure soul. She has always been sweet and loving to me. Dean visited his grandparents every weekend. Sometimes my husband used to take him and sometimes I did. After he turned 1, he started staying over at his grandparents for the weekend. We took that as an opportunity to rekindle our relationship. To be honest, pregnancy and nursing a child does push the romance into the back seat. We were working parents, so we didn't time during the week. We kinda enjoyed the weekend by ourselves when Dean spent time with his grandparents. Things got better between me and Phil as we met quite often. We used to have weekly dinner at their place. When Phil got to know about my second pregnancy, he started telling my son that mini Dean would be coming soon. I knew it was a boy, but my husband wanted it to be a surprise, so I didn't tell anyone. I hated when Phil said only boys are born in his family because my second son was gonna boost his ego, but there was nothing I could do. When my younger son, Sean, was born, Phil entered my room with Dean in his arms saying, "Let's see our junior Dean. I'm sure he would look just like his dad, grandpa, and brother." When I handed over the baby to him and he saw him, he freaked out. He said, "Why does he have a brown eye? Are you sure it's your son? I bet they have given you the wrong baby." "Let me call the nurse," I said. "Relax, he is my son and he has been with me ever since they pulled him out, so there's no chance of exchange." He said, "Then how come his eyes are not blue?" I said, "Brown eyes are the most common eye color, and besides that, my father and my siblings have brown eyes, so what's a big deal?" He said, "He cannot take the features of your family. Look at Dean, he looks every bit like my son, and look at this lump, he doesn't have any of our features. Are you sure he is my grandkid?" I was horrified at his question. I replied, "Are you accusing me of cheating on my husband?" He said, "Then how else the baby doesn't resemble any of us?" I screamed, "Genetics. He looks like me, can't you see?" He got mad at me that I raised my voice at him. He kept the baby back into the bassinet and whispered to Mill, "We're leaving. We don't touch the baby until they do a DNA test to confirm he is my grandchild." He didn't let Mill touch the baby and asked her to come with him. She left with a puppy face. She is another doormat creature. I wanted to smack Phil's head as he left my room. My husband wasn't around. He was downstairs to sign the discharge papers. After a while, he came inside and asked, "What happened?" I saw my folks leaving the hallway. They seemed pretty upset. I screamed, "Your dad thinks my womb is a photocopying machine and this time it malfunctioned and didn't produce your copy." He cracked up at my metaphor and I got mad at him. Now, when I'm writing this, I think it was funny. But at that time, his laugh made me crankier. I was so annoyed that I didn't feel like repeating the incident to him. I told him to ask his parents about this. He is a smart guy. He called his mother and she narrated to him the entire thing. The expression on my husband's face was satisfying. He reacted in the same way I had expected. He flipped out and yelled, "He is my son. We're not running any paternity test to satisfy that grumpy man's ego." Sadly, his mother often has to face the brunt of Phil's behavior. I started crying because it was just too much for me to handle. I had delivered 8 hours ago, I was bleeding. I was in pain due to episiotomy, I was sore nursing the baby, and on top of that, my Phil accused me of cheating. My husband hugged me and said we would not run any paternity test on our child. His support meant everything to me at that point. Dean was staying with his grandparents during my delivery. After I came back home, my husband went to pick him up. Phil was at home. He asked my husband when was the DNA report coming. Yeah, that's how my Phil is. He thinks his statement is a court order and people will have to abide by it. My husband told him that we are not doing any tests and he knows he is the father of our son. I'm sure there would have been more discussion on my character, but my husband said that was it. He brought Dean home. He was happy to meet his younger brother, but he said, Popsy, his grandfather, was telling that the baby would look like me, then why does the baby has brown eyes and not blue eyes like me? It made my blood boil, but I said, your baby brother looks like Grandma, my dad. You saw his eyes are brown, right? He nodded and kissed the baby's forehead. There hasn't been any discussion since then, but Phil has not allowed Mill to visit the baby until we run a paternity test. The thing is, we don't give a rat $1 shit about his demand, but it hurts to see Mill suffering. She video calls me to see the baby and sobs that she cannot take him into her arms. I don't know what to do. I mean, I know it's our baby because I have never cheated on me. So, there's no harm in getting the DNA test done and close the matter, but it would be like boosting my Phil's ego, which I really don't want to do. Any suggestion here is highly appreciated. Update 1. Hello all, thanks for the comments. My baby turned 6 months old. He has started looking like me, which I and my husband absolutely adore, but there's a problem with the elder one. I'll come to it eventually. The situation with Phil is still the same. He refused to accept Sean as his grandchild until he saw the DNA report. Mill was also not allowed to meet the baby. However, she visits us during the afternoon when Phil and my husband are at work. No one knew about this secret meeting. It's unusual for people to know that I share a very good relationship with my Mill. She's the reason we are still in touch with Phil. She loves both her grandsons dearly and we don't want to take that away from her. Meanwhile, Dean continued visiting her grandparents. He spent his weekend fishing and golfing with his grandpa. He loved spending time with him. It was a relief for us because it gave us enough time to care for the younger one. However, it was a curse in disguise. Phil is using this opportunity to turn my son against me. 2 weeks ago, Dean told me that I should send Sean back to his parents. I was confused at his request. I said, we are Sean's parents and it is his house. So where do you want me to send him? He said he asked his popsy why he was not visiting our home and why we were not having family dinners as we used to have. Phil told him Sean was not his brother and someone else's child, so unless I give him away to his father, he was not going to come to our house. I was flabbergasted at this. How can someone be so evil as to fill poison into a 4-year-old kid? This was not a single incident. Of late, I noticed Dean was behaving very rudely. He had grown resentful of his brother. She throws a lot of tantrums. We were ignoring it until now, taking it to be his meltdown, but now we realize that he's turning into an entitled brat. In fact, we discussed this with a psychologist and she said that sibling jealousy was very common. He feels less important after his brother came, so he was acting that way. She suggested we give him the time and space to accept the baby and develop the siblings' feelings. She gave us a few tips and activities to do with the kids to build the connection and asked us to wait for at least a year. Now we know that he didn't harbor that hatred of his own, but it is being fed by his grandpa. Though I was super angry at Dean, I realized it was not his words, so I went soft with him. I made him understand that grandpa might be kidding, so he shouldn't take it seriously, and emphasized that Sean was his baby brother and he should treat him like one. When my husband came in the evening, I told him about it. He is a short-tempered man. He got angry and wanted to call his dad and school him. I sat him down and made him understand that there's a deeper problem. I told him we should do the DNA test and close the chapter once and for all because this is creating chaos in the family, but he is not budging from his stand. He says he doesn't need to prove to anyone. He does not understand that Phil is using that against us. He has been feeding lies to Dean and turning him bitter. My husband is a great human being except for one trait he inherited from his father: stubbornness. He refused to drop his gun and do the DNA test. He called his dad and yelled that he had been feeding shit to our son, and if he continues to do so, we'll cut him off from Dean's life. I got absolutely pissed off at this. I mean, this is a very delicate situation. We cannot just stop Dean from going to his grandpa. He is almost 5 now. He questions everything. We have to be smart in our moves. I don't know how to deal with this situation. Update 2. Hey guys, thanks for putting up with me. It has become therapeutic for me. Here's the new update. After the last blowout, things were silent and usual. Mill continued to visit us secretly, but now she came when Dean was at his play school. He was super close to his grandpa and we didn't want him to leak this secret. I told my Mill that she needs to show her backbone and stand up for her choice. This secret meeting is not helping anyone, but she chose to have it this way. Anyways, Dean visits his grandparents as usual. Though he didn't say or do anything evil to his brother, I somehow do not like his closeness with Phil. The main reason is Dean is too attached to him and Phil is turning my kid into a mini version of himself, which I really don't want. That attachment is becoming toxic for us. Last weekend, my parents came over. They live 9 hours away. I told Dean that this weekend he's not going to his grandparents because we are going out with my parents. He started throwing tantrums at us. How could we not let him meet his grandpa? I tried to make him understand that Granny came from so far away to meet him so he could skip meeting Grandpa for one weekend. He started crying and throwing things at me. I wanted to punish him but my parents were there. They stopped me. Dean is their grandkid too. They also can't see him crying. My parents were disheartened but they still insisted that we drop Dean to his grandpa if he doesn't want to spend time with them. I got so mad at my husband that I said we had to cut off his dad from our life because I didn't want my son to be a chauvinist like his grandfather. He got mad at me. I don't know if I overstepped my boundary but I don't care. He later understood that I was trying to protect my son. I think the water has breached all levels and now we should think about cutting off my Phil from Dean's life. I don't want to think about my Mill anymore because she needs to stand up for herself. Update 3, Dean turned 5 this Wednesday. His grandpa gifted him a PS5 and an iPhone 12. I was shocked to see that. I told my husband that Dean is 5 and he doesn't need an iPhone or any phone for that matter. And PS5? Who gives a 5-year-old PS5? This wasn't a gift but spoiling. In the past as well, I had complained to my husband that Phil had been spoiling him with unnecessary gifts but he shrugged it off that his father was just being a loving grandpa. I took away the phone from Dean and said he could not have it as he was still a kid. He turned rebellious, snatched the phone from my hand, and said he was going to report me to his grandpa. I was astonished at his behavior. My husband snatched the phone from his hand. He started crying and said, "Grandpa told me that you hate him and you don't want me to spend time with him. Grandpa gave me this phone so that I can talk to him whenever I want. I'm gonna report you." Tears welled up in my eyes as he said this. I thought I lost my son to my Phil. My husband calmed down Dean and asked him all the details. So, Phil has been filing poison in Dean's ear. He has been telling him that we don't love Dean and we are going to separate him from his grandpa so whenever he feels threatened he should call him. Phil had even fed his number on that phone that night. I cried myself to sleep. My husband tried to pacify me and said we would cut off Phil from our life, etc. The next day I told my husband whether he likes it or not I am going to get the DNA test on Sean and then shove the report on Phil's face before cutting him off. He tried to push back but I said if he doesn't comply, I'm gonna think about separating our ways because I'm done with his stubbornness and his dad's toxicity. He gave in and we did the test yesterday. We're awaiting test results. Meanwhile, we have enrolled Dean in counseling to clean up the poison he has been fed. I'll update the thread as things develop. Update 4, finally, we have cut off Phil from our life. As I mentioned earlier, we did the DNA test and it came out that Sean is 100% my husband's son. We didn't have any doubt about that. However, the incidents leading to the cutoff were quite dramatic. Phil put up a shit show when we didn't drop Dean at his home on the weekend. He called up my husband and asked about it. My husband said Dean was busy. We are taking him out for a picnic. He was annoyed at this but didn't say anything. We actually went for the picnic. We realized that it was partly our mistake to let our son spend so much time with him. Initially, Dean was upset but he enjoyed the day out with us. Then the following weekend, we again took him out for a water activity. This continued for 3 weeks until Phil lost his shit and said he knew what we were trying to do. He threatened us that he would take away our son from us if we didn't let him meet Dean. I said sure, try us. Then the DNA report came and we went to his place with Sean. We left Dean with the babysitter. Phil was shocked to see us. This was the first time I was visiting him after Sean was born. He asked, "Where is my grandson?" I said in my arms. He said I'm talking about my legitimate grandson, Dean. And mind you, this brown-eyed guy shouldn't be at my home next time. I pulled out the DNA report and literally threw it at him. He screamed at me to watch my behavior. I said I have behaved very well in the past which I regret now because you deserve this disrespect. You looked down upon me. You accused me of cheating on my husband. You turned my son against me. What do you expect in return? Check out the DNA report. Looks like your gene is not strong enough to suppress the brown eyes. Sad for you, Sean is your grandson but you won't get to play with any of your grandsons now. We're cutting you off from our life. He was shocked and short of words. He looked at my husband to pitch in but he said it was my decision and I had his full support. Phil screamed that he was going to report us to CPS for neglecting Dean and would take his custody. I said try it and I would rip you apart. I don't know how I got so fierce that day. I guess all the rage that was piling up over these years came out. I was spitting venom I tell you and I don't regret any bit of it. He tried to contact my husband after that but he put his foot down and said we are not letting Dean around him until he is an adult. Phil showed up at my husband's workplace to convince him but my husband said if he further pestered us, we would leave the country and ghost them. Since then, he has been silent and I like it that way. Mill called me and sobbed. She asked if she could continue with her secret visit. I informed her that her son knows about it and we're fine with her visit until that grumpy evil man is out of our sight. She showed up once after that and apologized to me for her husband's behavior. I told her that she should learn to stand up for herself. I hope she understands this. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Came home early to find my wife cheating with a repairman in our living room while our baby watching. So I filed for divorce and won custody. Now her family disowned her. My wife and I were what you'll call the perfect couple. We loved each other so much and attended events, gatherings, weddings, church, and other social gatherings. Like I mentioned at the beginning of my story, we attended the same church, and being that she was a very devoted Christian, attended church all the time, and didn't live the kind of lifestyle other women on social media did, I believed she was the one for me. I liked her from the moment I set my eyes on her, and because she was the only woman I was attracted to since I moved into the city, I thought it was wise to talk to a couple of people before we became a thing, and they all guaranteed me she was a great girl. Indeed, she was a great girl. She was well-mannered, polite, pretty, and kind to other people, including strangers. She was a college graduate and worked as a vet assistant in one of the biggest vet shops in town. On my end, I worked with a marketing firm, and I built websites as a side job. Eventually, I got closer to her after observing her for a while, and we ended up dating. We dated for only a year, and we got married. Initially, I thought I was making one of the best decisions of my life, but after things turned out the way they did, I realized I made a terrible mistake. After my wife and I got married, we had a son after a year, and our life seemed perfect. We were one big happy family, and I did my best to look after our son. Despite how much I tried to keep my family together and give them a good life, something always had to go wrong. The first thing that happened was that our 6-month-old son broke his left arm while my wife cared for him one weekend. That Saturday, I went to hang out with a couple of friends and then stopped to get groceries on my way back. When I got home, the first thing I heard was the loud cry of our son, and when I rushed to check what was going on, I met my wife, trying to stop him from crying. According to her, she wanted to grab something from a neighbor's house, so she asked my 7-year-old nephew, who came over to stay with us that weekend, to look after the baby, and in the process of playing with our son while she was away, he broke his arm. I don't really get how. Maybe my nephew must have pulled his arm too hard, or tried to throw him and grab him like we did in his presence. Funnily enough, when I returned home, my wife was all dressed, and it was odd for her to visit a neighbor looking all dressed. I suspected something was off, but at that time, what was most important was getting our son back to good health, and achieving that took a while. By the time our son had recovered fully, the matter had died, and I could not bring it up again. Although I tried to question my nephew, he was slightly shaken by what had happened, and his side of the story was not coordinating with my wife's. About a year after that, I noticed that my wife and I grew distant. We were both working hard to make ends meet, but it wasn't like our jobs changed. We still did the same job, worked the same hours, and split chores at home, and even though I was a bit difficult at times, I still loved her and treated her well. The reason we had issues was because she was just too careless and dirty. It was crazy for me to come home and see our son's removed diaper on a dirty plate in the sink, and the whole kitchen smelled terrible. There are also some things I cannot say here because of how embarrassing it was. Aside from her carelessness and not being as tidy as I wanted, we had no other issues. I also tried to make up to her whenever I started our fights and arguments. So, she wouldn't think I was maltreating or nagging her because of our age difference. All this while, I never thought my wife would cheat on me until I saw things with my own eyes. It was devastating because I loved her more than I loved myself, and I sacrificed a lot to make her happy. That day, I came home from work about an hour earlier because I wasn't feeling well. When I got home, I noticed that our repairman's company truck was parked in my driveway, which was odd. And because his vehicle was in the driveway, I was forced to park behind him. When getting to my porch, I heard very loud moaning from my living room, and I immediately knew what was happening. To be sure of what I heard, I pushed the door open with force, and my eyes saw something I couldn't get out of my head to date. My wife and the repairman were doing it on our couch, and our son was in the living room watching them. I was so mad that I grabbed our son first before I kicked the repairman out of our house, and I yelled at my wife to join him, but she refused. She begged me, knelt down, and cried like she was innocent. She held my legs and even rolled on the floor if that wasn't enough. She told me she was sorry and didn't know what made her do it. She even tried to lie about it being their first time, but I was sure it wasn't. Without me saying it, she knew our next step would be a divorce, and before I even voiced it, she started begging me not to divorce her. She knew she had a reputation to keep, and that's why she begged me not to divorce her. I also knew she wanted our marriage, so I played a smart one on her. I told her I wouldn't divorce her if she told her friends, family, and the church the absolute truth about her affair with the repairman, and she agreed. I kicked her out of the house and took our son from her to avoid making her feel comfortable with the crime she had committed. Meanwhile, while the repairman was around, I threatened to report him to the organization he worked for, and I did. I had heard stories of repairman and pizza delivery boys having affairs with married women, but I thought it was made up until it happened to me. Long story short, she exposed herself, and it turned out she was having an affair with him since the time our baby broke his arm. She lied and said she had gone out to get something from a neighbor, but in reality, she went out with him, leaving our son behind with a 7-year-old. When everyone heard this, they were so disappointed. And I still filed for a divorce and used her evidence against her in court. I also mentioned the part where she had our son in the living room while she was doing it with the repair guy, and I mentioned how careless she was to leave our baby with another child, which resulted in a broken arm. With all that presented, I won custody of our son. Meanwhile, her parents were so disappointed that they disowned her and wanted nothing to do with her anymore. Since then, she has been living with their rejection, and as for the repair man, his company fired him, but I don't know if they carried on with their affair. The church had to suspend her for a while, but I left the church and moved to a different house. This happened 2 years ago, and right now, I have met someone who also has a daughter around my son's age, and we are taking care of the kids together.